I'd like to introduce Tim McCutcheon, Strategic Advisor to Wealth Minerals. Tim, you can take it from here, please.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining. This presentation is about Wealth Minerals. I think one of the key things here is just an opportunity to update our audience, and for those not familiar, to get them acquainted with Wealth Minerals. There's a lot of changes happening in Chile where we operate, and it's an exciting time for the company. Going into this is our customary statement moving forward, and then talking a little bit about wealth. So wealth is designed as a company to take advantage of this paradigm shift that's happening in the world today in terms of the way we use and consume electricity. The most visible sort of aspect of this is, of course, the introduction of electric cars. And Tesla, is the sort of the flag bearer of this overall trend that's happening in the world today. You want electric car, the incumbent technology for all of this sort of stuff is lithium-ion batteries. The lithium-ion batteries, obviously a key component is lithium, and it's increasingly clear amongst investor audiences and even the broader public that there is a dearth of lithium supply relative to anticipated demand in the coming decade. And then the question, of course, is, well, from an investment point of view, how can you tap into that? What's the best way to tap into that? And what are your options? So wealth was designed around this idea of giving investors an opportunity to get exposure to lithium in a country that has a very established track record of being a solid jurisdiction where property rights are respected, and so that you can go to sleep knowing you're not going to wake up in the morning with some headline that gives you nightmares the next night. So Chile is stable. Rule of law there applies. It's a very methodical sort of place in terms of how to work and what to do. Everything's prescribed. And then the other idea is that within Chile, where is the best place to be if if you chose a jurisdiction, not choose the asset. And we have a 46,000 hectare position in the Atacama Salar. For those of you who don't know, the southern part of the Atacama Salar represents about a quarter of global production and is the world's lowest cost, highest grade lithium deposit in the world. We have the northern part of the Salar. We'll talk about why that's significant. But the point is that it is by far a tier one class asset. It's an asset that single-handedly can change global supply demand dynamics. We also have a position in the Ayagüe Salar, which is further to the north, right on the Bolivia border. We've been able to do quite a bit of work there recently, and that's an exciting source of news flow for the company. And lastly, we have a lot of know-how within the Wealth Minerals Group and all the people involved. And so when we see an opportunity to basically unlock that know-how for the benefit of shareholders, we do it. And in the Kootenays in eastern BC, we have a battery metal exploration project, copper, nickel, that is early stage, but has potential to be quite significant. And of course, in a jurisdiction, again, where everyone from strategic investor on down to retail is very happy to be involved with, because they know that their investment is safe. Just a brief overview of our cap structure, about 300 million shares out. We don't have a lot of overhang in terms of warrants and everything else. The main reason for that is that, as the share prices performed from some of the placements we did 2 years ago, and so a lot of those warrants and options have been exercised. It's brought in cash into the company, and it's also meant that there really isn't a lot of overhang going forward, which is great for shareholders. And an important part to bring out at this point in the presentation is, because the company has existed on equity financings through primarily high net worth individuals, retail and whatnot, stock's actually liquid. And unlike a lot of TSXV listed companies in the junior mining space, it's very hard, many times, to put a position on and take that position off if you're a stock trader, for example, or whatnot. With the case of Wealth Minerals, you actually can put on a position very sizable and take it off so that you can trade around the stock, you can trade sort of what's going on in the company and the overall market theme. We regularly trade 1 million shares a day, which is very much unlike a lot of our peer group companies, which is, again, another positive point, having that underlying liquidity when you make an investment in wealth minerals. Our management team, of course, this is where all of the magic begins. Hank Jonathan, sort of a serial natural resources entrepreneur, and he got together with Marcelo Awad, who was executive vice president of Codelco, as well as CEO of Antofagasta, two major mining companies in Chile. They got together at the end of 2015, 2016, put together Wealth Minerals with the idea, what we discussed earlier, about getting exposure to lithium in a jurisdiction that everyone's comfortable with. Put the project together, and it's sort of been moving forward our assets in Chile ever since. Rounding out the team, we have some very top-tier geologists. John Drobe has been a geologist of the group for a very long time, very talented guy who is very skeptical, meaning that when he does like something, it's not by accident. He's not giving it the benefit of the doubt. He's been very rigorous in his opinion. And then Stephen Foote, who has decades of experience in Chile and actually used to work in the southern part of the Atacama Salar before coming and becoming part of the Wealth Minerals team. So he has a lot of experience specifically in Atacama and decades of experience working and living in Chile. Our board of directors, again, a very solid group of people that, of course, make sure that there's proper oversight for the benefit of shareholders when it comes to that relationship between shareholders and the management. Advisory board, I'm involved here as well. I used to be president of the company. Now I'm acting in the role of strategic advisor, really helping out with everything that I helped start in 2016 and 17 and 18 going on to get the company sort of up into orbit. Jürgen Geisinger is a fantastic fellow. He used to be the CEO of one of the world's largest automobile parts companies, including CEO of Continental Tire. His role there, being at the forefront of German and continental European industry, means that we get a foot in the door with pretty much every single industrial concern in Europe that may be a consumer of lithium or want to become a consumer of lithium, which means that we get a top tier seat with potential investors from that part of the world. Cesar Hill is arguably, one of the top 2 or 3 guys in the world regarding the production of lithium, how it's produced, what are the various pitfalls of new technology, old technology, what are things to look out for, and where what direction you want to go in terms of taking that crucial step from a resource into a production situation. So he's part of the team as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I think it's so obvious that and a lot of people on this call have probably read quite a bit about it. But the underlying reality is that the world is embracing a way to store energy outside of hydrocarbons. That way to store energy, the incumbent technology is lithium-ion battery technology. Lithium-ion battery technology obviously needs lithium to do it, and we are at the point of exponential growth as it's gradually being adopted throughout the world. The fact of the matter is, though, is that the actual supply of lithium is falling behind anticipated demand. And it's definitely clear, certainly to all of us in the industry, but increasingly consumers of lithium are starting to understand that they need to go down. They need to go down upstream, to the original source of their raw materials to actually implement their plans, and they're getting out of their comfort zone. And you're seeing more and more transactions that are public regarding consumers of lithium getting financially involved, managerially involved in raw material projects because they have to. They don't particularly want to, but they have to, because if they don't, all of their other plans are going to come to a halt. By definition, you can't have a lithium-ion battery without lithium. So your multi-billion-dollar gigafactory that's supposed to churn out all of these battery packs for your, hundreds of thousands or if not millions of cars produced annually, all of that's got to come to a halt if you don't secure the lithium supply. And that's really what's exciting about Wealth Minerals right now, is, I've been doing this for a while, and it's very recently I have noticed a significant uptick in inquiries from very large multinational companies, inquiries about wealth minerals. This is something that has definitely changed since the beginning of this year, and it's certainly even changed. The tempo has picked up even more since Chilean President Boric announced his new lithium policy several weeks ago. And then this is just that same theme, but in a different way of looking at it. M&A activity in the lithium space has been at breathtaking speed. You have lithium miners combining with each other to get that scale, to give them access to capital markets for further growth that they're going to need if they want to meet demand going forward. And you're also getting companies just getting picked off one by one, being bought by conglomerates or bigger companies, for the most part out of China. Chinese have invested a lot of money into downstream value add, and they have realized really before anyone else that you got to secure the supply to create the value. And so they've been very, very aggressive in terms of acquiring projects throughout the world, whether it be brine projects like we have wealth in Chile, whether it be hard rock deposits in Australia and Africa and whatnot. They've been sort of at the forefront. But what's happening now is you're seeing other parts of the world, other major sort of industrial centers, realizing they're behind the ball a little bit, and now they're stepping up to get that access to raw materials. So you're seeing a lot more activity in North America, seeing a lot more activity out of Europe, but they are frankly, several years behind their Chinese peer group. So this is what we talked about. This is a catalyst event that has really changed sort of how the outlook for our company, frankly. Chile, the flip side of Chile being a very stable, understandable, sort of pedantic legal place is that no one's really going to go outside of the box. It's very centralized sort of legal system and political system, which means that you kind of need to get approval for everything. And in the case of lithium, up until recently, the problem has been that because there really are no precedents for what we're trying to do in Chile, no one really knows what to refer to when we ask the very simple question of, we have these properties, we want to develop them, dear government, tell us what form we need to fill out. And so that's been a bit of a challenge. And then now the President Boric came out last month with very clearly saying, look, the government's behind production in Chile. This is how we want to see it going. This is what we can do within the framework of our existing legal landscape, but we will be behind private enterprise moving forward the industry as a whole in Chile. And that really wasn't the case up until he made this announcement. So now you have a whole lot of activity within government to very methodically prescribe the steps to comply with this new policy, where the policy vision is very clear that the president wants this to happen. And so now it's, we are talking with a lot of people both within Chile about how to best position the company to take advantage of this new policy, as well as to sort of be ahead of the curve when it comes to the implementation of this policy, given the procedural framework that's laid out by various bureaucracy institutions within Chile. So all of that's happening right now. It's a very exciting time because we've been sort of sitting on our suitcase for a while, waiting to go, and now we can finally pick it up and move forward in terms of meeting people, getting things done, getting conceptual contracts, drawing up MOUs and whatnot. So it's an exciting time. It's frankly a new catalyst event for the advancement of wealth minerals and its projects in Chile. Our portfolio, our core asset, of course, is Atacama, 46,000 hectares. The idea of Atacama is the world's largest salar in production. A salar is basically a dry salt lake bed. They account from a resource point of view about 50% of the world's resource when it comes to lithium globally. They currently account for about 40% of lithium supply globally. And the rest is hard rock mining, which is very much akin to any other hard rock mining that you would do. But Atacama is special because it's the world's largest, highest grade, lowest cost salar in the world today. There's really nothing else like it in terms of geological parameters. It is an absolutely fantastic anomalous geological thing. We own the northern part of it. The southern part is controlled by a company called Corfo, which is a state company, and SQM and Albemarle, two private companies, are production contractors on Corfo's land. And they're the ones in their operations account for about a quarter of global production. We also own a project called Ayagüe, which is in the north, right on the Bolivian border. This project is smaller in scale and scope than Atacama. However, because it is smaller and because it is a little more remote and in the backwater areas, it doesn't draw the same sort of attention. And because of that, it makes it a lot easier for a company like Wealth to just get forward and go with it. I can't emphasize enough for our audience that the Atacama asset is spectacular. It is the equivalent of us controlling, the oil sands in Alberta in their entirety, practically. Because of that, though, it attracts a lot of attention. I mean, anytime you have a very large natural resource asset in a relatively small country, that asset becomes very political. And there is a lot of politics around Atacama. We are navigating that political landscape. But what it does mean is that things that can be done in Ayagüe very, very quickly take a little more time at Atacama. So as a company, we have pushed forward as fast as we can on Ayagüe, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But in Atacama, we're pushing forward so that we can replicate that success in Ayagüe. And we hope to share with you results on our work in Atacama this year. So the flagship project, and I think the key thing here, given time constraints of this presentation, is simply a lithium. A salar is essentially a basin within the topography of the earth that fills up with water. If you're in a dry enough place, that water evaporates off, leaves behind residual salts. You wait 50 million years and that basin gets filled up with all of these salts. And it's also, the water is still there as well. It's only the top crust layer that you see in all those beautiful pictures where it's dried out to the point where you can actually walk on it. It's a dried crust. Salt water conducts electricity very, very well. Those salts are potassium salts, sodium salts, and also lithium salts. So the reason all this is important is when you look at this picture now in the presentation, you see that big bright pink blob. What that is telling you is that we have taken electrical current, shocked it through the earth, and the rate at which that electricity goes down and then bounces back up. What that is telling you is what the electricity is encountering in its travels. Pink means that it's encountering almost nothing. And I think everyone here knows that salt water conducts electricity very, very well. What this map is telling you is that we have a whole bunch of salt water. And if you have salt water in this part of the world, in this thing, you have lithium salts. And so just to give you an idea, I mean, the scale of this is absolutely enormous. We're talking, I think the best map that we had in previous presentations was something like 8 times the size of Manhattan. It's just a huge underground pool of salty brine, which contains lithium. And this means that in the southern part, right on the southern edge of that border, is that same basin extends all the way down throughout the salar, the Atacama Salar. And in the southern part of that is where a quarter of global production happens at the lowest cost and the highest grade. So you're basically a bathtub where we have the northern half of the bathtub and our peer group companies have the southern half. And I'd like to mention that the peer group companies in the southern half have a combined market capitalization of, I think, over $40 billion. So, just gives you an idea that what Wealth Minerals is from an investor point of view is a call option on this northern part becoming similar to the southern part. And this is a little more for people reading into this more, and you're welcome to read this. And the NI 43-101 report is on CDAR, where all our public filings are, to give you more color if you care to do more of that. And again, this slide here just really emphasizes the scale of how big that bathtub is underground. We're talking several kilometers tall, as well as tens of kilometers wide in circumference. So it's a very, very large basin. And in the interest of time, this is outside of 8 times the size of Manhattan. Ayagüe is our other project to the north. I think the key thing here to point out is that because we put a lot of effort into making sure that we're good corporate citizens and we're working with local communities so that the project benefits everyone, because by benefiting everyone, from a business point of view, it means that we won't have interruptions in the future. We'll have a smooth permitting process and public hearing process. From a business point of view, it means that it's the easiest path to make sure you have a solid asset in a good operating environment where there are no disruptions, so that you're constantly churning out good profit margins. You're constantly churning out very predictable sort of production footprints, because you know you're welcomed in the community. So we've been very, very good at making sure that we're on board with the local community. We have an agreement with them to work in that area. And the fruits of that agreement are the work that we did last summer, coming out with a resource on the project. So 1.4 million tons of lithium, lithium carbonate, just shy of 200 ppm, or milligrams per liter. This then leads to the other point where, one, it's very clear from the work that was done that the expansion potential of the resource is very, very high. Because that geophysical map shows that, we just have, it's constrained by the amount of holes we put in the ground. We put in more holes in the ground, we're going to get a larger resource. It's very clear, frankly, from that, looking at all of those reports. So for the audience, expect that resource number to get bigger. And the other thing is, as far as grade goes, we're not doing solar evaporation. Because we're not doing solar evaporation, we'll be using direct lithium extraction technology, which some of our people know that we've been on the forefront of that all the way back to 2019. And direct lithium extraction technology, DLE, actually works quite well at this grade, because solar evaporation, you're losing half of you're only recovering half of the lithium in brine when you use solar evaporation. When you use DLE, you're recovering like 98% of the lithium, which means that a 200 ppm type deposit actually works quite well. So we have a deposit that we believe is economically viable. We'll be coming out with a economic assessment on that asset very soon. We're working with an engineering firm that's our partner at Schmidt, which is basically ThyssenKrupp out of Germany. And so we look forward to sharing that, the results of that economic assessment with our investors later this year, later in the summer. And again, this is what we discussed about in terms of having that relationship with local indigenous people to make sure that everything goes forward smoothly. It also serves as sort of a roadmap for how we work together with people in the Atacama. I see here that we're sort of running out a little bit of time. If someone has questions, I'd be more than happy to take them now. I think in general, if I can just go through, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. So I think we're in good shape. If there's any questions in the audience, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
We have time for one question, and I'll read the one that was written here. You mentioned a mad scramble amongst all these companies. You guys are sitting on this world-class asset, and yet nothing ever happens.
Well, it's not that nothing ever. First of all, we are a public company. We have to be mindful of sort of what we put out in the public sphere and what's sort of proprietary to the company while we're having discussions with strategic partners. The key thing is a lot of the strategic partners were waiting for the Bordich announcement that came out last month. So we're only a month away from that. And that fundamentally changes how strategic investors evaluate the ability to move things forward in Chile in this space. So that's number one. We've had a lot of conversations. Now those conversations are becoming much more concrete because of the new president's policy moving forward. That also means that objective metrics in terms of putting a number in the framework that you can actually put in an Excel spreadsheet are changing because we have this new policy. This new policy now opens up the door to make it a hell of a lot easier for us to do a lot of the field work that we have planned in the past, but we're constrained by a lack of policy. So you're going to see drilling activity on Atacama that puts in numbers, puts out a resource that makes it a hell of a lot easier for us to bring in those strategic partners. But I want to remind the audience, we did have a strategic partner on this, even without putting a single drill hole. And then COVID and some geopolitical stuff sort of put a monkey wrench into the works. But the reality is this project already has attracted a strategic partner, a very sophisticated one at that. So we're going to do it again. I think the best is ahead of us. And again, the prize is definitely worth it. This $100 million call option was potentially a multi-billion-dollar asset.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate you presenting, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please send me an email. I'll be more than happy to answer those off this forum.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.